Thanks, Scott.
So now we can swear a little bit. So everybody meet Brian. This is typical of how social leverage works and the networks work. Brian and I knew each other through the ether and through digitally through Twitter and our mutual respect through deal flow. And then he came to speak at I pinged him, DM'd him last year. I said, come speak at Stocktoberfest. Let's just talk about product. Tinder's fascinating. You know, my son's fascinated by it. It's an incredible company, Match.com. Could we, and obviously, you know, StockTwits is 99% male, and the 9% that have female avatars are still male. And so I think it would be an interesting conversation. And, you know, and everybody gets excited when a female avatar shows up on StockTwits. You see her? I go, yeah, she's on every website. That's Tom of StockTwits. So let's talk about the excitement, because you guys weren't here, most of you, for Stocktoberfest East, when Brian blew my mind and talked about certain products that make life magical, and Tinder's one of them. So talk about the rocket ship of what Tinder looked like versus the chart of StockTwits. What is it like to just turn on something and it just goes whoosh?
Cumulatively, it probably took 10 years off my life to start. But 5 to 6 years in, it feels surreal. I think the interesting thing about product market fit is you can't explain it, but when it happens to you, it is one of those oh my god moments, and it never stops. You know, post Sochi Olympics.
It wasn't like a week.
It
Were you
wasn't
worried that like this will go away?
Well,
is that the biggest worry when it happens?
No, it was much more of a worry about keeping the lights on and actually just standing up the app. After the Sochi Olympics, I think, you know, we were looking at, you know, a couple 100,000 organic installs a day. And, you know, if you do the math on that, extrapolate forward, we're talking about at some point, you know, half the human population will have used your app. And, you know, you have the data scientists that come in and say, we're growing at this rate, and this means, you know, if we're able to hit China, this is how many people we'll have. And you just sort of pause for a minute, and then you go outside and the tornado starts again. Whether it be, you know, nefarious actors on the platform, or breaking, or problems with Facebook, one of our favorite partners. It's just never ending. And so I think the interesting thing about product market fit is it is just a constant battle that never ends. It's like a 25-round prize fight. And, you know, there are obviously incredible fruits of the labor, but when you're in it, it's almost impossible to sort of disassociate yourself.
And so everybody in our world thinking about monetization, young fintech companies, when do you turn on? How do you turn it on? How do you grow? At what point when you're growing can you charge for something? Well, how did you think about that at Tinder? And
yeah,
talk about the revenue and the size of Tinder.
The interesting thing about business model sort of poetry is you have to find the right model for the right use case. You talked a lot about AdSense and AdWords. That was great for a desktop world. You could paste ads up, people would click on them. There was this virtuous cycle. Google became, you know, essentially $1 trillion company that way. But mobile changed the game. So mobile has this slightly different UX where people are snacking. They're coming for shorter periods of time. There's less screen real estate. So, you know, what we did is what we always do. We take all the old models from the old platform, bring them to the new platform. None of them work. A bunch of companies go bust, and then new companies come out. So, you know, if you look at mobile right now, mobile is you know, really tailored well to this subscription model. And so in 2014, there was a lot of pressure as we were growing big to build a very big consumer ad business. And you know that I used to work with Senor Adam Bain at Twitter. So we were sort of very tied into the intelligentsia around advertising, and everyone's saying, do this, you'll build $1 billion company. But we were very, very methodical. Very thoughtful about how we thought about the customer interaction, and we saw subscription as a more natural place for us than pure advertising. Though we do have an advertising business and it is strong. On Tinder we have an advertising business as well, but we focused on the subscription because it was much more native. And
you subscribe to the ads go away.
Yes. Yeah, but that wasn't the primary benefit for it. And you got to remember too, this is a 2014-ish where, you know, the subscription model of Spotify, of Netflix, of Amazon Prime had not yet caught fire. People weren't thinking of this as it was the trend du jour, but it wasn't necessarily mainstream. So when we introduced subscriptions, it was a bit of a head scratcher. But what I found and what I learned about it is that the appropriate business model for the appropriate problem, the appropriate platform is really the key question. It's not bringing the existing tools from, whatever platform of into your world. It is what works for you. And so I think you have sort of three different striations of business model. Sort of we'll call it growth. You had ads that did really, really well for, a small amount of companies. I mean, Google essentially wiped the ad tech ecosystem off the face of the earth. Then you had subscription, Spotify, Netflix, Amazon, Tinder, huge dominant, multi-$100 billion companies. And now you're moving to crypto, which is a token-based model, where the token is essentially the business model. I know that you are a big fan of Fred Wilson and Chris Dixon. There's some friends of mine who also are very interested in this idea of the token being the actual model itself.
So let's talk about that, because it's a little over my pay grade in the sense I was long some Bitcoin. I am long Bitcoin. I'm long some Ethereum. I don't technically. I could read the white paper 12 times. I understand supply demand. Talk about the new business model. I want to talk about two things: social and the new business model. But let's talk about the new business model and what tokenization means to you, and how this moves us further into subscriptions. Is it a different type of subscription or a subscription over? How do you think about the token?
I think about the token sort of completely divorced from the idea of subscription. It's its own model. The reason why, right now we're at this really interesting stage of crypto where everyone thinks that crypto is this sort of magic money, this programmable money, but what we're really doing is just moving money around. So why is Coinbase worth $20 billion? Well, it is the on-ramp to move money around. So that is why it's the most valuable company in crypto. But the future that crypto provides is not about moving money around. It's about decentralization. It's about participation. It's about divisibility. It's about allowing, everyone in this room has heard this pitch of, I have an idea for a social network where everyone gets paid. Everyone who participates in the network gets paid. That's a utopian idea. It's a beautiful idea, but that doesn't work today. There's no mechanism for it. There's no business model for it. The capital structure of these companies couldn't do it if they wanted to do it. But with tokenization, you start to move into these worlds where the business models that you couldn't even think of become a reality. And with tokenization and with interweaving it with a decentralized social network, we will see a world where participants within the network or nodes in the network that are powerful, that are driving traffic, driving consumption, will get paid.
And what has to happen for all
via
that?
The token.
And what's a better on-ramp, or what's the next on-ramp? Like what? I know you're an investor in a company, but what has to happen for the foist that's been going on to become FOMO again? So we talk about foist and FOMO, right? There was a lot of FOMO last year when I was here.
Yep.
It was October. Crypto went on an incredible 2-month further run, and then the foist was underway. Like everybody all the retailers left holding the bag. What do we really need to have this time for the next stronger wave of tokens and crypto to take off?
So it's a great question, and I think if we knew the answer, you and I'd be running to put money in someone's pocket. There's a few different bets that have been made. So let's talk for a second about CryptoKitties. CryptoKitties was a very highly subscribed round. Fred did it. Essentially this idea of kind of think of it as baseball cards for digital assets that could be fractionalized. We need an experience that indoctrinates people that beyond purely trading and beyond holding. And if you look at the charts today and you can see these Ethereum apps and look at the numbers, it's absolutely abysmal. The top app has 6,000 people using it. That is not a true consumer experience. And as we've seen right now, Tinder, Spotify, Facebook, a true consumer experience can attract hundreds of millions of people. So we haven't had something that has a use case yet beyond holding and trading and doing all the fun stuff that finance people love to do that will attract the next breed.
What percentage of confidence do you have that will happen?
100%. There's too many smart people working on this problem. We've gone through some very interesting epochs in tech since 2010. If you even go backwards, you have server side, basically cloud computing, social networking. Social networking gave way to this whole mobile ecosystem. Then mobile gave way to AR, VR, chatbots, and everything sort of failed in that middle tier. All of that talent and all the talent that never even saw those failures has moved to crypto. And so what I'm excited about, one of the sort of trends that I'm playing on, is this idea that when you follow the smart people, forget following the money, follow the smart people, they are all migrating to crypto for a variety of reasons. I think there's a lot of sort of like deep down decentralized political dogma tied in there. It's an interesting time, as we know, politically. The future of work is distributed. There's teams, I work on crypto teams with people all over the world. It's no longer like, do you live in Silicon Valley? You have a guy in Romania, someone in South Africa, someone in Buenos Aires. I think the third thing that's driving crypto too is we've seen all these plays before, like these professional investors. There's an infrastructure period, there's a build out, there's kind of, the peak, and then it blows up, and then what happens is another 1,000 flowers blossom. And that's where we are today. And I think everyone looks at this, oh my God, crypto got, Bitcoin got to 18,000, but now it's at 6,000, must be over. Well, do you remember 2000 and 2003? And I went to the first TechCrunch meetup, and there was 11 people there. The first one. Yeah. And 3 of them became billionaires. Yeah. And,
so we're early. That's what kind of we want. This is a trend that we want to talk about. Brian, who was probably one of the fastest growing small company apps of all time, and now most important apps, has got to spend his time looking for more lightning in the balls. So that's where it is. And let's talk quickly before we go off about voice, AirPods.
Yeah.
Like, where are we at with that? I carry these around. So this is like my Apple. Apple, I'm very bullish on this. I don't care about the phone. I care about where these are, and I care about the stores, right? Like I check in on the health of Apple by seeing their retail locations and how they're thinking about it, and not so much about the phone, because I worry that the phone disappears. Like I don't even know where my phone is, meaning I've become this person that wants to use my phone less just to be more productive and in the moment. And the AirPods don't do enough for me. They're very intimate. So where are we at with voice and your kid? You have younger kids, so where are we at?
So, all great technology disappears. It is a rule of technology. It all disappears. The best technology goes away. And so, there's this phase of it humanizes, it miniaturizes, and it disappears. And that is what happens. That is the technology cycle that has happened since the beginning of time. And right now we're at this peak phone consumption period where, we're all addicted to our phone. Apple's, releasing things to tell you about your screen time and whatnot. And, what I'm seeing is sort of a new trend emerge, which is I think a lot of the power of the phone will still exist and it will be in your pocket, but this connectivity point where your pupils are staring at this, this screen all day long, that is going to go away. And what is going to happen is you're going to find ways to interact with the real world, with your friends, in a much more human way. And because let's be honest, staring at a phone is not human. And the AirPods are an incredible bridge to take us there. And so we thought it was going to be some big, clunky Oculus thing, and Facebook bet $1 billion on it. And what we're realizing is it's a kind of a subpar gaming platform. But what happens in all these innovation cycles is things win that you would least expect. And when Apple, bet on the AirPods, it's an interesting product. It was very subtle. Yeah. But now if you go around and you walk around Coronado,
New York 50%.
It is now infecting every metropolitan city, and it is a new platform to build upon. And so, as you know, I can't sort of let all my juice out, but it is something that a lot of people are going to do a lot of interesting things with, and it's going to pull us back away from the phone, but give us still the phone functionality.
We want the power of the phone. We just don't want it to own us.
Well, and it is owning us, and I think we have to have these tools. Otherwise, at the rate we're going right now, it's not sustainable. And also the other thing about voice, it's a very, very natural interface.
Well, like your daughter.
My daughter's 7 years old. She's a savant using voice. She can search anything on YouTube, search anything on Netflix, which is obviously scary and frightening. But what you learn is the principal interface is that she uses voice because it's the most natural. And she looks at me texting as like, why do you do that? That's so much work. Yeah. And she's learning how to text, but she says she would rather use voice because guess what? Path of least resistance. The only other two things I wanted to mention too that I'm really interested in.
Then what happens to emojis? That would be a sad, sad emoji when
we
that
have
happens.
voice emojis. I mean, the other two things I'm looking at, again, I think I hit on distributed work is huge.
Yeah. Slack, Zoom.
I mean, and
real estate prices.
Infinite amounts of technology that we haven't even yet thought of, whether it's hologram meetings or there's just so many things going on with the future work that's interesting to me. And then, another thing that hit me about a year ago is a friend of mine said, how many centimillionaires do you know that are self-made women? And, it hit me like a baseball. And I realized that, do you know Catherine Gold? Do you know of her? So Catherine Gold was was a mentor of mine, one of the most famous female venture capitalists ever, self-made billionaire. Unfortunately, she passed away, first investor in Netflix. And I said, I only know one, personally, only knew one. And what I think is really, really interesting about this time, and I know you're seeing it, is there's an entire new crop of companies coming out that are women-led that, frankly, a man could never imagine. Yeah. And they're so much different. There's such a different sort of way of thinking about the world, of structuring a pitch, of appealing to an audience that we thought we understood, but we don't. Yeah. And I think there is just a huge economic opportunity for these women investors and women, anyone who even wants to explore this space, men too, to invest. Yeah. But it's
a woman's eye. We have is the matriarchy here? Yeah. So they're a little grumpy. Just keep your distance from them, but they're really smart, and they are attacking this in a really interesting way. And I think we're at day one there. Surprisingly, we haven't talked about this until this minute. Yeah, we haven't. There's this company in New York called The Wing, which is finally these areas where women are like finding themselves and self-selecting and building their own communities, and it's a community that it has to come from. And so the fact that you bring that up is interesting.
You mentioned something about product earlier, which is that's obviously what I do. Great product comes from just a visceral understanding of what's important. I call it holding the line. You have to hold the line so tight. And there's so many ways to deviate, to fall off, and to do something for the loudest customer, the worst customer, the best customer. But there's, a few people in this world that have been able to sort of master it. I think of like Johnny Ive. I think of Dyson. I think of Steve. People who have just, for 30 years, held one line. And I look at all these sort of now women-led companies. Men could never have done that. Yeah. They don't know how to hold that line. Yeah. They don't have the perspective, and so you see Stitch Fix that's coming out, and I mean, I could list 20 companies that I've seen in the last like 6 months where I go, holy shit, this is all new. This is day zero.
Yeah. So I agree. So that's a focus of social leverage. You asked what a focus of us. I'll let everybody go, but thanks for coming. Yeah. Brian, the exciting news for StockTwits is a fresh board member of StockTwits, which is a huge vote of confidence for us. So we have our first true help to build the product the way product people are supposed to build it. Justin's got some help finally on the team. So we appreciate that, and Ian does too. And then also, you're on the board of AngelList, which is really cool. So Brian sees things. The most important thing about investing is, I think, and you said this, there's following price, which it really works in the public markets if you build a system around it, and then there's following smart people. And that is, you got to keep it really simple. And so, it's fun to be friends with Brian because he follows really smart people, and he makes it easier for me to follow those smart people because he speaks in a language that makes it easier for me. And then I try and make the language easier for the people that follow me, and on we go. And eventually people learn the language of this. And it's going to happen really fast in the next 10 years. And that's why, I'm not nervous, I'm bullish. I'm only nervous for people respecting this gift that's coming their way because it's open to everybody. All right, we'll end it there, and then I don't know who's next. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you.